All right, let's go through an anatomy and physiology course overview. Are you ready? In class, you're going to get this note sheet. You're going to glue it on the left side of your notebook. And then during class, you're going to add to it underlining, highlighting, sketches, definitions, drawings, whatever, to make the notes your own. At the end, we'll answer the question at the bottom. And this is all part of what's required for your notes. What you can see right here, this part, and you're going to see it on every slide, this is the part of your note sheet that we're talking about. Anatomy is the study of body structure. What does it look like? Where are all the parts? We have macroscopic or gross anatomy. You can see it with your eyes. Now, you may have to cut someone open to see it, so you can't necessarily see it from the outside of their body, but you can see it with your eyes. That means you don't need magnification, so it can be inside or outside the body. We have surface anatomy. That's a type of gross anatomy. So we can see evidence of it on the body's surface. So you might see evidence of somebody's ribs, or you can see evidence of the clavicle or collarbone if someone has an Adam's apple. You can see evidence of what is underneath from the surface. Then we have regional anatomy. So again, this is another form of gross anatomy, and I want you to be careful because gross anatomy, right, what you can see with your eyes is macroscopic, meaning you can just see it with your eyes, you don't need a microscope. And this type of gross anatomy is called regional anatomy. So we might focus on the head or cephalic region. We might focus on the abdomen. We might focus on the arm, but it is based on region of the body. And then another form of macroscopic or gross anatomy is systemic anatomy. So that's studying the anatomy based on body systems. And that's primarily what we're going to do in this class, like study the skeletal system, study the circulatory system. And then we have microscopic anatomy. We need magnification to see. So we need a microscope, different types of microscopes, but we need a microscope to be able to see that part of the anatomy. And two main classifications for this. We have cytology, which studies cells. So this is a blood smear. And then we have histology, which studies tissues. And this is bone. This is osseous tissue. Then we have physiology. Physiology is the study of body function. So remember, anatomy was structure, function is physiology. And that means, so how do the parts work? What do they do? How do they work together? And we have cell physiology. So how do cells function? So this is showing a type of diffusion. This is facilitated diffusion across a cell membrane. But do cells release hormones? How are they absorbing glucose? All those kinds of things. And then we have systemic physiology, and that's based on, again, systems. So how does the cardiovascular system function? How does the skeletal system function? And then we have pathological physiology, which is rarely called pathological physiology. It's just smushed and called pathology, which means disease. So the study of what happens when things go wrong. What if you don't produce insulin? What if you produce too much insulin? And there are a lot of tools that help doctors learn about a patient's anatomy, so we're going to look at some of them. All right, so here we have a micrograph, and that's a picture using a microscope. And then we have a sonogram, also called an ultrasound, sometimes called sonography, and it uses sound waves to get a picture. And then we have X-rays. It uses radiation to get a picture. We have a CT scan. This uses radiation with computers to get a much more detailed picture. So it's taking a series of X-rays, and so giving a view of slices. And then we have an MRI scan. So instead of using radiation, it uses a magnetic field. And this gives us a much clearer picture than a CT scan. However, it's more expensive. So even though it's safer, it's more expensive. So most of the time people will have a CT first if needed. And if the doctor or medical professional needs more detailed pictures, they would go to an MRI next. And then we have a PET scan, which uses a radioactive tracer. Now, all of the other ones, the micrograph, the sonogram, the X-ray, the CT, the MRI, they're going to show us a picture like in a moment of time. Okay, a PET scan shows function. So it shows how the radioactive tracer is utilized in whatever part of the body we are studying. Okay, so this shows function, not just structure. Why do we study anatomy and physiology together? So that's your culminating question. So we're going to talk about that in class. And here are some example answers for why we actually pair them together, because form and function, structure and function are inherently linked together, and it's very difficult to pull them apart. And there you go. There is an overview of anatomy and physiology, our course for the year.